PyTest's default behavior is to capture all of your program's output on stdout and stdr. Today I want to show you how you can influence this behavior and also how you can get access to the captured output inside of your tests so that you can make assertions about it. To do so, I'm creating a first unit test, and inside of my test I'm using the print function to print something to stdout, which is the default behavior of the print function, and also to print something to stdr. When I run this test, then the test case is succeeding, of course, because it has no assertions that could fail, but you don't see any of the output neither on stdout nor on stdr, and the reason for that is PyTest's default behavior, which is to capture everything. The next step is to add a second test case that also prints messages to stdout and stdr, but this time I'm forcing the test case to fail by adding a assert false in the end of the test case, and for the sake of clarity I'm also adding a assert true in the end of the first test case. When you run the test suite again now, then you get one passed and one failed test. And for the failed test, PyTest tells you where the failure happened, meaning you get the file name and the line number where the assertion error was raised. But it also prints out for you all of the output that it captured while it was running a test, because potentially this information could also be helpful to understand why the test failed. Now this was only half of the story, because PyTest distinguishes between output that is coming from our Python process itself and output that is coming from subprocesses that our Python program may or may not start. So in order to test this as well, we need our Python program to execute subprocesses to generate such output. And the easiest way to do this is the system function inside of the OS module. This function takes the string that it receives as an argument and executes it inside of a subshell. And this means that we can simply use the shell's built-in echo command to print something to stdout, and to print to stdr we can just redirect the output by appending greater than %2 to the command. This is a little shell scripting trick that's not really important now. If you are curious, you can search for output redirection to look it up. But for us, the only thing that really matters now is that our subprocess prints something to stdr. Now, if we run the test suite again, you still see the same behavior. You see one failed and one passed test. And for the failed test, you see that PyTest has captured both the output of our Python program itself as well as the output of all sub-processes. This behavior can be changed with PyTest -- capture option, and as it turns out there are 4 alternatives that we can try now. Firstly, we can completely disable capturing by setting the option to no, and this means that you see all of the output from your tests, including the output from sub-processes, directly on your screen while the tests are executing. The next alternative to try is setting the capture option to sys, and this means that PyTest will capture all of the output that is generated by your Python program, but not the output that's coming from subprocesses. The third alternative is FD, which is short for file descriptor, and this means that PyTest captures everything, including the output from subprocesses. And this is the behavior that we already saw, because it is the default if you don't specify the capture option at all. The last alternative to consider is setting capture to tsys, and this is sort of a middle ground between the other alternatives, because on the one hand it shows all of the output, including from subprocesses, while your tests are executing, but it also captures the output from your Python program, but not from subprocesses. Now, just to keep everything in a clean state, I'm marking our second test case with PyTest's xFail property to let PyTest know that this test case is expected to fail and it should not fail the test suite as a whole. Now, to get the output that PyTest captures anyways by default inside of our tests so that we can make assertions about it, we can use a number of different fixtures that ship with PyTest. The first of which I want to talk about is called capsys, which is short for capture system. And to demonstrate this, I'm creating a third test case that will again print something to stdout and stdr using both Python itself as well as subprocesses. The most important feature of this fixture is that it provides a method called readoutr that we are going to call now. And this method returns a tuple with 2 strings, where the first string is the captured standard output and the second string is the captured standard error. And at this point we have two ordinary string variables that we can work with as usual. The next fixture that we need to talk about is called capfd, which is short for capture file descriptor. And this is basically exactly the same as capsys, with the exception that it also captures output generated by subprocesses. Furthermore, both fixtures, capsys and capfd, have a binary version, meaning that the readoutr method returns a tuple of bytes instead of strings, but otherwise their behavior is exactly the same. The very last point I want to make is that you can also call the readoutr method multiple times on your fixture, and each time you call it, it returns the output that has been captured so far, but it also clears the output that has been captured so far. Meaning if you call it the second time, you get only the output that has been generated since you called it for the first time. That's it for today. I hope you found this video interesting and learned something new. If so, please consider leaving a like and subscribing to my channel. Also, if you have any questions, please leave a comment as well. Thank you very much for watching and see you next time. Bye bye.